Hey Sasha,
Yes.
I have two questions.
Right.
Can you train a dog that lunges at other dogs? And is it possible to calm a dog that is hyper-aroused?
Very good questions. So it is all too tempting to answer the questions without practically demonstrating the negative implications of hyper-arousal or reactivity, in your case, like lunging and going at other dogs. So I think the best way to answer it, because I could throw the theory and the explanation, but it's a little bit too long, and most people will be very lost and they not know where to go and how to go about it. So I think the best way is for me to simulate like a real life training situation, and then you can see it yourself, and then we will deal with that problem. We will start with the reactivity, and we'll deal with the hyper-arousal later. So yeah, so it's that's how I can answer both questions at once, is by like an actual real life training event. Yeah.
Good day, everyone. My name is Sasha Moldenhauer. I am a behavior student and a dog trainer. And I'd like to share with you guys a video and explain factors that are an impediment to dog training and how to achieve successful dog-to-dog socialization and interaction using positive reinforcement. So yeah, I just hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it's educational. And yeah, let's jump to the first clip so that I can start explaining stuff.
Nice one.
Yeah, and just to give you a sense of context, so there was a challenge basically to see if we can put the dogs together. So you see in this video, they are two adolescent pit bull terriers. Those dogs are for my cousin, and the four dogs that I was walking earlier on are my personal dogs that I've trained. And basically, we wanted to do a reintroduction because we have done one before and it wasn't very successful. The meet and greet wasn't pleasant at all. So we wanted to do it in a neutral place, but it wasn't not entirely neutral because the dogs are very trigger stacked and very overstimulated. But we were trying to do that. We were trying to do a reintroduction, and to actually basically demonstrate that even with so much going on, we can still control dogs and we can still get them to be calm, and we use positive reinforcement techniques, or we observe emotional an emotional based training, or dog-centered training, as opposed to human-centered training where we just want them to comply and we use aversion or aversive tools or punishment or corrections. None of that happened throughout the entire video. Dogs were just just interacting as naturally and as normal as they can, and we were just managing and controlling that.
Come, Raksha. Come, Chucky. Good girl, Chucky. Yes, kiss. Good girl. Now what? Good girl, Raksha. Sit. Sorry guys.
Yeah, we can see it. So this part here, this clip is there's quite a lot of things that transpired. So we can see my cousin's dogs getting a slightly reactive, and well, not slightly, they're really going for my dog. And the important thing to note here is that they were held back by a leash. So there was restriction. So that causes a dog to be very, very frustrated. That causes agitation or irritability, and it gets the dog to be very, or exacerbates aggression in general. And we see that many times. So a lot of dog trainers, I think this is something that you see all the time, where dogs, when you have them on a leash and they want to go to something or want to do something, want to get to something, and you are basically stopping them from doing that by, having them with a leash or restricting them. Sometimes that can turn into aggression, and then in this case it turned into reactive behaviors that we've just seen right now. But another thing that that is very important to note is the social skills, or the excellent canine skills and impulse control that my dog was displaying, rather. So he was not combative. He stood his ground. He was very confident. And also he took instructions from me, because Buster, which is my big husky mix. He has this police function, or like a prefect almost. He wants to. He's a disciplinarian. That's the first thing, and then the second thing, he wants to always try and diffuse conflict or tension whenever there's dogs, and he does it in a very nice, sound way. But I think in this case, I had to insist that he doesn't do it, and he also had to have the impulse control and to understand that in that situation, in that scenario, it wasn't a right thing to do. So that strategy for controlling other dogs' behaviors is something that he couldn't do at this time. So another video that I can show you guys is a clip that I did one day, and I watched him basically in a doggy daycare facility, and he would control or try his best to manage all the adolescent jerks that were there. He was managing their behaviors, and this is very good for a dog that's going to learn how to interact with other dogs in the future. So he's not teaching bad behavior, he's teaching them how to be regulated. When they feel like they can do whatever they want to do, he brings them back into baseline, and then they're much more regulated and calm, and they can take instructions and be okay. Yeah, in this clip here, we were just observing the dogs interact with each other, and we can see the exacerbation of reactive behaviors. So we can still see reactive behaviors, and my cousin was asking me a question. Actually, it's a very nice question, because I had to answer it very sharply, and he was like, why is it that Rocky, which is his male pit bull dog that actually did go for my husky, he was like, why does he behave differently when he's outside to when he's at home? And I was like, okay, what's the difference? What does he do outside that doesn't do at home? And he's like, at home he's a sweetheart. He's a puppy. He's a very trainable dog. He's an excellent dog, and everybody at home admires his personality. But as soon as he gets out of the gate, it's as if there is no training has ever been done with him, and he looks like he has never been trained. He loses his marbles. He's not controllable. He's impulsive. He's just pulling and lunging and everything. And I was like to him, well, you've got three things to think about, and one of them is hyper-arousal. So hyper-arousal state is a state where there's just overstimulation, and essentially the brain is flooded with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, making it very hard for dogs to calm down and to regulate themselves and focus. And that actually does sort of like get reactive behaviors to be more pronounced. Hyper-arousal is one of the major causes of reactivity. I'm not saying that reactivity is caused by hyper-arousal, but in these kind of situations, hyper-arousal is the cause for reactivity. And reactivity, what is reactivity? So reactivity is a dog that overreacts to a common stimuli. And dogs do this by barking, lunging, growling at people, other dogs, vehicles, and other animals. And it's not an inherent aggressive behavior, but rather the dogs don't, probably they have like an overreaction to whatever perceived threats they have. So my dog hates people, hates men, sorry. My dogs hate men. So if she sees them in a place where she less predicted that there'll be a man, and he just popped out from the bush, and then she'll probably go berserk, and she'll lose it, and she'll go at him. So she has a problem with men. So that's a dog that is reactive to men. All right. So that's just an example of what reactivity is. And I told him that he has another problem that he has is that he's the breed type. You know, pit bull terriers by nature were bred that be put down in a fighting venue, a fighting arena against an opponent dog, and immediately go into fight behaviors. They immediately go into fight. You know, they're not bred to go in there and start, you know, socializing and, you know, having play bows and whatnot. No, they're bred to go in there and start fighting. So you can imagine that, you know, because of their breed, it's going to be very hard for them to, you know, just be expected to socialize with other dogs that they don't know. And if they have good reasons, you know, to be aggressive towards those dogs, they will exercise their breed-specific behaviors so that they can be able to deal with the conflict. So that's another thing you have to take note of, the breed that he has. And you can always sort of like, you know, discourage behaviors like that. Or if, for instance, in this case, there was a border collie that was reactive, we want to see a lot of herding behaviors or snappy behaviors from the border collie, alongside with all the, you know, border collie herding behaviors like clapping and, you know, circling and herding behaviors, basically, such as that. And if you had a German Shepherd, you will see a lot of barking, you know, very reactive behaviors. I'm talking about dogs that would be reactive, and their breed is what sort of like creates that, you know, reactivity as well, or reinforces that reactivity because of their breed specific behaviors. So yeah, that's another thing that you told him he must pay attention to, and you can definitely train that through counter conditioning. No aversion, no corrections. Counter conditioning can definitely do that. And another thing you have to take note of is that these are adolescents. They're in an adolescent phase, which is a perfectly known fact in the canine development. You know, this is the canine development stage where the puppies are basically maturing sexually and behaviorally into being adults. And they this transitioning actually is triggered by hormones, and hormones like insulin, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone, causing them to have this you know, increased independence and pushiness in behavior, and reduced focus and trainability. So, and this is actually the most destructive phase that most people actually know. If there's any dog trainer here, they'll tell you adolescents are very destructive. So if you want to train an adolescent dog, do not train them in a very stressful environment. What I suggest you should do is that go into a calm, or stay in calm, you know, secure places, and then try and teach them, you know, basics and stuff there, and then or you practice desensitization. Do it in calm, less distractful places, so that they can be able to grasp the concept and be able to be trained. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. Adolescents just can't be trained, or is very difficult to train. You can definitely train them, but it's very difficult. I once trained a German Shepherd that was an adolescent, and it was in his the height of hormonal fluctuations, or influenced by hormones, and it was very hard for me to train him. The only time I could ever do anything, it was when I threatened that his owner is going to leave the venue, the training venue, and that is the only time he stopped whatever he was doing and he would come and go after his owner. Otherwise, it was very hard to train him. So that's another thing that you have to pay attention to if you have adolescents. Yeah, and it's very important that you walk adolescents, or you walk through that process and that phase with consistency and with training, and do not expect too much from them, because it's very hard for them to actually control themselves and to regulate themselves. And it's a relatively short phase, so it's between 6 months and 18 months, and we just have to wait it out. But don't just sit down and do nothing. Obviously, do training at home. I would suggest that do training at home. Don't take them out into the outside world, because there's just so much happening. They'll pay attention to everything else other than yourself. and it's just going to harbor a lot of frustration from you as well, and you get irritated, and that results, some people actually do get very irritated and then resort to slightly overhanded approach and corrections and whatnot. So please just try and keep your dogs at home. It's much more trainable there when they're in an adolescent phase. Yeah, so in this clip here, you will see I was trying to get my dogs back on lead so that I can control them and then give the opportunity to my cousin to let his dogs off leash. And someone might ask, okay, isn't that risky? Actually, they also asked, is it my dogs together is a problem, to get them off leash. It's hard to control them. I told them no, they'll actually be very controllable, and I'll explain why they were much more controllable in this kind of a situation. So I wanted to get him to get his dogs off leash, so that they can have an off leash experience as well, and we sort of like loosen some of that tension, and we sort of like reduce their frustration, because we were harboring a lot of frustration because they were on lead and my dogs were off leash, so it's like sort of like unfair. So I had to let him have the experience. An opportunity to get his dogs off leash. But I noticed that there was a dog outside, and I had to quickly get one of my dogs and go to this dog and try to do a little bit of focus exercises and sits, and focus exercises and sits, and nose target exercises, so that the dogs, well, that is just to get the dog to have to basically be reassured that we're not going to do anything wrong to him, and he doesn't have to feel like we're going to attack him or anything like that, and then attempt to open the gate and get him to go inside this house. How I knew that he's actually a very well-behaved dog, and how I knew that is that these dogs are usually dogs that I assume that it's one of those dogs that go out and explore and forage and then come back. And dogs like that are usually very behaviorally and very sound and very matured and have excellent canine skills, because they have an opportunity to explore and to forage. That's very important. Exploration and foraging is very important for dogs, because dogs are obligate scavengers. That's why my dogs, if you've seen the entirety of the entire video, you'll see my dogs scavenging more than doing anything else. And then when they're with me, what are they doing? They're still getting treats. So and scavenging is very important for dogs, because it's just rewards that they just be getting, and then also that it's the exploration and the hunting expeditions, whatever. It gets them to be, basically it's for mapping and for them to better understand where they are, for spatial awareness. And dogs love to do that. They love to do mapping and love to know where they are, and it's very good for predictability as well. So if you have a reactive dog, predictability is a very important factor. So your dogs being able to predict the environment that they're in will make them less reactive, because they know what's coming. They don't have to worry. But those dogs that don't know what's coming, I think those are the ones that usually succumb to reactive behaviors. Yep. So we got the dogs off leash, my cousin's dogs, and they were having fun. And you can see that the aggression sort of like disappeared. No aggression anymore. No reactivity, or no reactive behaviors, or no aggressive behaviors. And we don't see them trying to lunge and attack my dogs anymore. Rather, they'll go and investigate my dogs and then check how they're doing. But a very important thing to note here is that I am keeping my dogs occupied with brain exercises, with games, games. So this is a very famous one called Nose Target. So I like to do that, and I like to do sort of like tossing the treats in different positions so that they can, it's just a mental stimulation game, and my dogs love it so much. So while I was doing that, I was offering, my dogs were offering appropriate, canine, behaviors, or appropriate affiliative canine behaviors that discourage any kind of reactivity, or will basically discourage a dog from attacking my dogs and going after my dogs. So no matter how much Rocky or Ocean wanted to go for my dogs, they were discouraged because I was, my dogs were on sits and downs and everything. So we're like, okay, there's a lot of fun happening here, and you know those words. So the association to the words as well, sit and down, they know those words. So like, we're not going to fight them because we have no reason to fight them. They are just, well-behaved dogs. And that is a very important thing to take note of, is that if you have a dog that's showing good affiliative behaviors like this, appeasement behaviors, then other dogs will be discouraged to fight with your dog. Come and stop all of a sudden and be like, must I fight with you? What must I do? Oh, well, let me just try and smell your rear end, and we will diffuse the situation from there, and they'll just be okay and calm and collected. So there won't be any aggression. So teach your dogs things like that, and I'm telling you, it will definitely work for you one day when you meet an aggressive dog. So it is very important as well to note that I was using reinforcement techniques here. I was using, positive reinforcement to do all this. So there was never any time where I had to punish dogs or cause any kind of physical harm to them so that they can listen. And my cousin also wasn't doing that. So another thing that so someone might ask here, why was it possible that these dogs could be off leash, my cousin's dogs? Because my cousin actually asked me that question, if it's possible for them to be off leash. And I told them yes, though it would be possible, particularly for two reasons that I have. Then one of them is that there is a term that I stole from somewhere, but the people will be actually very angry at me if they discover this. But it's called the proximity mum meter. Proximity mum meter. So basically what it entails is that it's the distance that a puppy can go from its den or from its mother before it starts, displacing or expressing distress signals. Basically calling mum back and, wanting to come back to mum and be in a safe place and not be, in a place where it wandered too often, it doesn't know how to come back. So that's one technique I use. The social manipulation that I do all the time whenever I have dogs and I'm introducing dogs to each other. And basically I knew that if he lets them off leash and my dogs are on lead, with that space and a distance that the dogs were in, it's going to make it extremely impossible for the dogs to fight. And it's going to make it extremely impossible for the dogs to wander too far from the park. And you see the dogs are staying within the vicinity where we were in. They never go away. So this is one technique that I also use for off-leash training, to gain perfect off-leash reliability. Yeah, so it's actually very fun. These things get me to be very excited. So there's another thing also that is a very important thing to note, is that I told him that they'll have that they will actually stay with you because when they are too close to my dogs, it actually does sort of like enhance resource guarding as well. So resource guarding is basically a behavior that is a normal behavior in dogs, where a dog basically protects its or guard rather its toy, food or person that it loves, or a specific place, and from other dogs. It's basically an attempt to regulate resources from other dogs. And it's a perfect canine behavior. It's something that is known, but it has to be managed. So in this case, if my dogs are too close to his dogs, then that's what causes resource guarding, and then the dogs are prompted to act aggressively. So that's how I knew that these dogs can't be off leash, because there is no reason to resource guard, and the proximity mum meter will cause them to be very close to my cousin as opposed to be there or whatever. And they'll have a good strong recall because they're always going to want to come and check in and come back to my cousin. Forced for pulling before, yeah, so their pulling has been reinforced, so that's why they're frantic pullers. And so I had to get them on collars to better manage them and better control them, and to try and walk all the dogs together, which was a very stupid reason in this scenario, but I actually did it, and I don't know why I did it, but this is not the protocol of training that I usually condone, and this is not my approach completely. But I did try to walk all the dogs together, because a pack walk sort of like, you know, it gets the dogs to have, sometimes it actually does this, it gets them to have like a unified, mindset. It gets them to be very unified and gets them to be, collaborative and to work together at once. And it gets them to forget about their individual triggers or individual, thoughts or whatever, and they focus on what everybody's doing as a collective. And that's a very important thing with pack walks. Pack walks. I'm a dog walker too, so I understand exactly the positive thing about the positive factor of pack walks. So redirected to my leg, and that's why I had to jerk and then sort of like redirecting to a different position. Otherwise, he would have get a good bite out of me. But he nipped me, and that's what happened in this video. It's called redirected aggression. But now the important thing to note is that after that, arousing situation, how does a dog come down again? How does it come back to baseline? How does it bounce back? That's the important thing. And Rocky bounced back very nicely, and I was able to stop at some point and let them to sniff and let them to congress there and be together, and there was no aggression at all. It just happened when I was trying to get the dogs and walk them together. Otherwise, afterwards there was no aggression completely, and that's a very important thing. So training is very important when it comes to that, and Rocky was able to bounce back very easily, very nicely after that, very stimulating and arousing situation. Beulah got distracted. There was a temporary moment where she got very distracted, and she was sort of like very interested in the black female pit bull, Ocean, and she was very interested in her, and then she was trying to sniff her rear end while she was walking, and Ocean was very irritated by that, and she turned back and then actually snapped at my dog. So and the dog ahead of her was sort of like secreting some stuff into some molecules, and she was sniffing it behind and was getting very excited. Despite the fact that she's a very well controlled dog, she was getting very excited, and
Okay.
she was prompted to go and do whatever she wanted to do. Probably would wanted to cause some trouble with her and then start fighting, but she got corrected and she understood that that
Yeah.
was a bad behavior, and she was able to to accept that she was corrected, and she fixed her behavior and didn't do it again. And that's the important thing. You have dogs that can recognize that they have mistakes and be able to continue as if nothing
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Dogs here, and as I was walking, you'll see that right there. So when that dog did that, when Ocean did that, when she turned back and looked at my dogs, what did my dogs do? They stopped, and then they continued walking. So if my dogs didn't do that, there was going to be probably a fight between the dogs, because
But I think into you should like mega
Bro, please can you take the video?
They are able to. That's how you know.
Take the video.